If I was an executive at Mercedes-Benz back in 2005 when this BMW E93 series came out, I'd have been quite frankly gutted, because I'd have got in one of these and I'd thought, oh man, we've got a long way to come. What a car it really was. You know, it was a technologically advanced rear-wheel drive 3-box saloon car in the executive market. A dynamically great car. It had all of the sort of features that you want from a BMW, like 50-50 weight distribution, rear-wheel drive. Now this car, it's been around since 2005, it's almost 20 years old now, and I'd really like to find out how good is it now, you know, all this time later, and I suspect that it is still a great car because it was of that era of the 2000s where they were really, for me, building the best cars going. From the moment you get behind the wheel of this car, it just feels purposeful and serious in almost every way. From the seriousness of how heavy this steering is, it's probably about as heavy as any steering I've had in any car I've driven before, especially at lower speeds, and it lightens up at higher speeds. To the interior, which is just this array of lines of like silver and black and just Germanic solidity, very simple and clear font that's just designed solely to tell you the exact speed and the exact RPM that you're doing. The little MPG meter that swings around wildly depending on how much you put your foot down on the throttle. Simple but effective orange LED screen in the centre, which tells you everything you need to know and nothing you don't. It doesn't sort of have a cockpit that is angled towards the driver, which is what BMW had been doing for a long time, so they kind of went away from that, which is a bit of a shame. I like the key on this car. It's kind of like a happy middle ground between what you would get with the keyless entry system now, which can be quite frustrating because you don't know where your key is half the time. Is it in my pocket? Is it in the car somewhere? In this car, it slots into the dashboard, so it just keeps hold of it for you. Now, as I'm pootling along in town, the ride quality of this car is quite nice. It's got 16-inch wheels, which is the smallest wheels you could get on this car, and it's got obviously big chunky tyres on it. Now, I suspect that if you opted for bigger, fancier alloy wheels, the ride quality is going to get a bit firm, because it is on the firm side now, but it's perfectly acceptable, and it soaks up the bumps reasonably well. The car is refined, of course. It's a very quiet car. It just cruises along. It's really easy to drive. It's easy to get into a comfortable driving position in this car. You can adjust the steering wheel up and down, in and out. The seats adjust into all of the different positions that you might want. But this car's an automatic, which either a manual or an automatic suits this car well. You can have the automatic for the cruising ability of this car, the quietness and the refinedness and everything. And then if you want a sporty car and you want to row your own gears, then you can do that with a manual. The automatic is silky smooth, of course. It doesn't mess about. It doesn't like hunt around for different gears. It just picks the gear you want and away you go. Now, when this car came out way back in 2005, it was actually derided for its looks because Top Gear called it the ugliest car of the year. It's not classically pretty, but the thing is, I think it has aged really well and it still looks really modern. Now, the preceding E46, that looks very 90s, it looks of its era. But this car, it's got all the sort of sculpted lines of a modern car. Now this, of course, is the saloon car, which is your main version of the E90, but if you didn't want a saloon car, there was the coupe, which was a very pretty coupe and probably the car I would go for just because it's just a really great looking car. That's the E92, as it's known. And then there was the touring, which was the E91, and that was obviously the big estate car with more space, a bit of practicality, car to get your dog in the back, to get your family in. If you wanted something flashy and fairly advanced for its time, there was the folding hardtop convertible, the E93, which had a metal roof which could basically keep you nice and dry and insulated and warm in the winter or on rainy days, and then you could fold all that metal away in this very complicated mechanism. So this car I'm in today is actually a prime example of the 3 Series of that time, because it's the 320d, and the 320d has the 2-litre diesel engine, which back in the mid-2000s was the one that everybody wanted, believe it or not. Now, obviously diesel doesn't have such a great reputation now, and personally I'm not a huge fan of diesel, but it definitely has its place. It was the car that all the business people had. It was because it had a great economy and low running costs. And, you know, there's a lot to like about the diesel engine. It's very punchy, it's got great performance, 0 to 60 in about 8 seconds, and of course it's that in-gear performance, as they say, where you get shoved back in your seat a bit, and it's just very easy to overtake, and it's very usable. If you didn't want the diesel, there were loads of other options. There was the great big straight 6 petrol engines. You know, you had 2.5, 3 litre. You had a turbo straight 6 in the 335. And then at the absolute top end of the engine range, of course, there was the BMW M3, which had a 4-litre V8, which was the first ever V8 that BMW had put in an M3, and of course, sadly, the last. It was a naturally aspirated unit that could rev up to 8,000 RPM. What a beast, and of course, you could get that car now actually for not bad money, because these are kind of the E90s at the bottom of the depreciation curve. So any model of E90 that you want to buy now now's the time to do it. So this car is the 320d SE, which is actually a sort of mid to low level on the equipment specification. I've got a few bits and bobs, like I've got cruise control, I've got an auto dim rear view mirror up here, and I've got dual zone climate control. But this car, of course, was available with loads of different bits and bobs, and you would have had to have paid good money to spec this car up, but it was available with xenon headlights, parking sensors, which actually this car does have. You could get a sunroof, sat nav, heated seats, Bluetooth and USB. You could get leather seats, folding mirrors, headlight washers, an iDrive system as well. Now that was the very advanced for the time little computer screen, and you could select it all with the little wheel in the middle. A little feature I spotted later that I really love is the lights in each door handle that appear when you unlock the car at night. There's two cup holders which pop out of the dashboard, which I can reach one of them from here. They come out in a very smooth way. You've got a nice little cubby hole here in the centre, and then another one behind it for just storing little odds and ends, and then a pretty big thing here by the handbrake. And then the glove box is a reasonable size as well, and then you've got some door pockets. Unlike certain other manufacturers, these are just plastic in here, they're not lined with any nice materials. And I don't have any sunglasses holder. Well, now's a time as good as any to find out how backseat JJ's getting on, so how's it going back there, mate? Yeah, I thought we'd touch base so going forward we can streamline the process. Yeah, keep me in the loop. Right, bye. What was that? Well, the thing is, JJ, this car, you keep going on about how good it is, and don't you think that it's just a little bit sort of lacking of character? You know, it's a good car, but it doesn't have anything interesting, anything quirky, anything sort of, I don't know. It's all just very well executed and German, and anyway, annoyingly, there is loads of legroom back here, loads of headroom. For this kind of mid-sized compact saloon, it's surprising how much room there is. I've got some nice softly damped Jesus handles up here, 3 different lights, map lights for the people in the back as well. But weirdly then, it's quite sparse. I've got no pockets on the back of the seats and no door pockets on the doors. I do have ventilation, which I can adjust the temperature and the amount of air coming through. I've got a little ashtray down here. These nice headrests that pop up in quite a nice way. So yeah, very spacious but quite basic. I imagine that you could probably option for lots of things, but that's the BMW way, isn't it? Well, thanks for your input. Yeah, oh, cheers, mate. There's only really one annoying thing about the BMW E90, the indicator stalk. It's bizarre. It doesn't click on. It's like a switch where if you tap it hard enough, the indicator stays on, and then to cancel it, you need to just tap it softly. If you press it the amount that you would expect to press an indicator to cancel it, it's going to put it on the other side. And you're going to look like a silly Billy because you've gone to turn your indicator off and now you're indicating the other way, and then you panic and you go to turn it off that way and then it goes that way, and you have this little back and forth. Now, you do get used to it. It self-cancels quite well, but if you're in the habit of cancelling your indicators or you're just lane changing, it can be a bit of a problem. So as I say, it's a great handling car. It's got 50-50 weight distribution, which means that if you put this car on a pivot, it would balance perfectly with the pivot in the middle. Because obviously you've got a big heavy engine at the front, so you need to shift some of the weight to the back. And they did that by basically using lighter weight components at the front, like lighter suspension and like bits aluminium and stuff, and then using steel at the back. They've got also the battery in the boot as well. The engine is back in the engine bay. All that means that you've got a very well-balanced car. It's got really well-judged suspension. Obviously it's on the firm side when you're in town. If I was to compare this to the E46 in terms of handling, it feels a little bit less floaty, a little bit more purposeful. Yeah, it's just a more modern car. It's 10 years newer, and they did a good job with the handling. So the two places this car is really at home are twisting A roads and B roads, where you can really get a pace on and the car handles really nicely, but also of course the motorway, because the BMW Executive Saloon car is designed to cruise along on the motorway with very minimal fuss, and it's very quiet, and it's just a really great well-planted motorway cruiser. What's that you said? You're driving a BMW with 133,000 miles on it and it's 18 years old. It's probably broken and nothing's working. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but in this case with this car, it's all working fine. I've got ice cold air conditioning on this pretty hot sunny day. Of course I am being a little bit silly there because it is a BMW, and you know they're relatively complicated cars. Because, you know, this is 20 years old. There's a lot of things that can go wrong on them, and therefore if you are looking for one of these, just the usual advice of looking for a car with full service history, of looking for a car that's clearly been cared for, because how is this car going to last all these miles and all those years without at least, you know, being serviced and having things replaced when they go wrong? The answer is it won't last. Nothing will. You know, for a BMW, they are actually well regarded as a pretty robust and well-built car, but you know, it's always worth making sure that you've checked the car out first, look at the buyer's guide and all that kind of stuff. Do you have an E93 series, or 91, 92 or 93 for that matter? Let me know in the comments what you think of the car. This car went on to be, by far and away, the best-selling posh executive saloon type car of that era. In 2006-2007 it was the 7th best-selling car in the UK of any car, and of course all the cars above that was stuff like the Ford Focus, the Fiesta, the Corsa, the Golf. So yeah, that's the BMW E90. It's a great all-round car. It's got great handling, it's got great performance, it's got good economy, it's got good practicality, it's got pretty good reliability for a BMW, and it's also a very safe car. So it's certainly a worthy successor to the E46 BMW 3 Series. Speaking of which, you can watch the review, it's up there. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. Please give the video a like if you've enjoyed watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.